Our brains assess for danger in 3 milliseconds. That's faster than you can blink. So one of the things that both the sociopath and the psychopath tend to do is...
Joe, you've spent 25 years in counterintelligence, SWAT, and at the FBI. You've interrogated spies, criminals, and master manipulators. So how can the rest of us spot lies and deception before it's too late?
Let's look at what we know scientifically about deception. So starting with Paul Ekman's work in 1986, we know that there is not one single behavior indicative of deception. What we look for, if I ask a question, does it cause you any kind of, and this is what you're looking for, psychological discomfort, which manifests as some physical change? For instance, I'll give you one that most people ignore. I asked you a question, so I need to have a hard conversation with you, Lisa, and where were you last night? And so as you're hearing my question and as you're pondering it, your jaw begins to go sideways. Jaw shifting is, I don't like the question.
Okay.
To the point where I'm going to distract my brain by putting pressure on my TMJ. And so why don't you like that question? Or as I ask the question, well, I really want to know where you were last night. The person may do a hard swallow. Why the tension, right? You know, if you ask me, where were you last night? I was here with my wife. It's pretty straightforward. But let's say there's a ventilating behavior. Last night, anytime you have to ventilate to answer a question, there's an issue. Now, we may not know what the issue is. I may have told you I was going to work out what I actually went to watch a basketball game or something. But if we have to ventilate to answer the question, oh, there's some issue. Not deception.
What is that doing exactly? Is kind of letting in air to cool down your body?
Yeah, so women do it differently. You guys do this. You go, well, let me answer that. So you let air in. Men will ventilate in our clothing up here or our socks. So often most people miss that somebody will reach down and pull on their socks because the skin changes temperature in 1/250th of a second. The minute the limbic system feels threatened, it already changes the temperature, and so you want to ventilate. But the other way may be that as you ask the question, we begin to see mouth distortion. Now, in the articles that I've written, or well, in my book, What Everybody's Saying, or in the articles I wrote for Psychology Today, I refer to the mouth as the emotional seismograph of the body. You see it all the time. When people get nervous or tense, their lips, anybody testifying in Congress, their lips disappear. They're gone. You can't even see their lips. You see this tightening of the lips, and that's caused by stress. Or somebody will answer, yeah, last night, and their lip is pulling. So any distortion of the lip is usually caused by psychological stress. So there's the stimulus, the question, and then there is the reaction. But it's not necessarily indicative of deception, but it is indicative of stress, discomfort, or anxiety. Now, the question is the why. So in my book, I talk about going to this house in Yuma, Arizona. And I asked the owner of the house, well, we're looking for your son. Is he here? And she said, no. And I said, well, is it possible that he's hiding in your house? And she immediately put her hand here. So this is the suprasternal notch. You have this little area, this neck dimple. This is the suprasternal notch. And women will cover that when there's fear, apprehension, concern, or insecurities, which is how teachers figure out who's prepared or not. And say, you guys will touch here. So, oh, there's that creep again. Oh, he's back. So it's very, very specific. Now, men tend to be more robust. We grab our necks, massage them. We're very physical because of testosterone. And by the way, these are universal. So this is what we look for. So most people think, well, we look for deception. Certainly not in anything that I've ever taught. And I've been teaching, in the FBI started teaching in 1984. What we look for is there a question? And then what is their reaction? So I'll give you another example. This is from the tribal lands where we had an individual that was killed with an ice pick. So the only person that knew the weapon was the perpetrator and the investigating agent. So one of the suspects who had a history of antisocial behavior, he in fact was a psychopath, I think. And I laugh now because I can't believe he wasn't already in prison when I ran into him, because he had killed another individual. So I sat him down, and his name was Ricky. And I said, well, Ricky, you say you didn't kill this man. No, I didn't. Okay. But if you had, would you have used a machete? No. Would you have used a gun? No. Would you have used a hatchet? No. I said, would you have used an ice pick? And his eyes just went like this and his chin came down. Because only ice pick is a threat to him. Nothing else was a threat. So his physiology reacted to the only thing that could threaten him: culpable knowledge of the exact weapon. And so his eyes came down, his chin came down, and I said, Ricky, come on. And then he confessed.
So explain to me, Joe, you said about the neck going down and then the eyes. Why is that a sign of discomfort? Or is it a change in your body language?
You're the first person to ask me that. That's a really good question because it's profound. Well, first of all, our body tends to protect itself. So we tend to lower our chin. We think it's lowering the chin in shame. It's actually lowering the chin because the brain is saying, hey, do something to protect your throat, which is the most vulnerable part of the area of the body. The eye closing is interesting. For instance, if you've ever noticed how much we touch our faces when we're pensive, or for instance, people who have difficulty with a topic, you'll touch your face. Women don't do it so much because of makeup, but you'll touch your face all day long. But when it's a really hard question, we scratch our face. We go from touching to scratching. Yeah. Now, here's what's interesting. It has to do with the fifth cranial nerve. So the fifth cranial nerve innervates from up here to the eye, to the tip of our nose, to self-soothe us, to pacify us. In my research, and I began to write about this 3 years ago, I found that because the nerves innervate the eyes, oftentimes you'll see people go, oh my God, I can't believe he did that, right? Mm-hmm. It's the touching of the eyes that helps to soothe us. And so many times we'll go, oh no, I can't believe he ran over my cat, right? The crunching of the eyes is a behavior that compresses the nerves in the eyelid and then begins to self-soothe us because of how quick, it's the quickness. The fifth cranial nerve goes from the face to the pons area just above the medulla. Super quick. I mean, we could calm ourselves by rubbing our legs, but this is so much faster. Wow. So we tend to do this. And what's interesting is when I studied children who were born blind in 1974, when they hear things they don't like, they don't cover their ears. They also cover their eyes. So it just reinforces this is very ancient in our biology. It certainly goes back to when we were archaic humans 300,000 years ago. But it's interesting, some of the other behaviors that are automatic For instance, we have the freeze response. So when we hear bad news or we hear a sound, we tend to freeze. And the reason for that is large felines that 300,000 years ago in Africa, anybody that ran initiated the chase, trip, bite sequence. So we learned to freeze. Like you hear bad something, right? So we freeze. The second one we do is we cover our necks. So that's why we do this. So it's a heuristic, it's a shortcut. We have basically 4 things to choose from. We freeze, cover the neck, we go like this. Oh, I can't believe this. Or we do this when we see something horrific, or even there's a point left difference. And the reason for that is so we don't broadcast our breath, because felines pick up on our breath. So from an evolutionary standpoint, we evolve these behaviors and they're still in our DNA. We know because children born blind perform them, but they helped us.
Let me just make sure I understand that last one, because that was just so incredible. So you're saying the reason why we cover our mouths when we're like gasping or we're shocked or something like triggers us is because back in the day, that gasping, if we didn't cover our mouths, the breath would be seen by a predator.
Exactly. It would be broadcast.
Wow. All right, guys, we'll be right back with more signs on how to spot a liar. But for 1 second, if you're struggling to build your confidence, to set boundaries, to stand up for yourself, to feel like you have a voice, then smash that subscribe button down there so that you can get notified every single time a video comes out. You have no idea how much that means to me, this community, and I really want you to be a part of it. So smash that subscribe button, get the notifications. Now, let's get back to the interview.
So, when we're under stress, we do things to self-soothe. But we may also do things, for instance, there's a famous case of a man who told a story about how his wife died. And then somebody said, oh, we have a video. And as they played the video, which goes against everything he said, his arms immediately came up. And for the next minute and a half, as they're watching this video, his hands are up here. And I was asked, why?
Just holding them, literally just holding them like
literally
that.
up here as they're watching the video. And somebody asked me and said, why is he doing that? And I said, large cats. And they go, what? And I said, this is in our DNA. It's a protective thing. So he at that point, he wasn't lying. He wasn't talking. He was just protecting his head because the video was a threat. What's interesting is everybody else was leaning in. Everybody else wanted to see it. So I've never focused on deception because even a good memory can go bad. I look at what are their reactions to what I ask. And then if I see displays of psychological discomfort, then I need to understand the why of it.
Most of the dangerous people, they don't actually look dangerous. They smile, they look charming, they look lovely. So what I've done is I've pulled a Jeffrey Epstein video, and what I want is for you to help us break down, are there any signs? Is he a master manipulator? Are there any signs that you may see that we can take away and learn from? So, okay, let's play the video.
Let's talk about Jane Doe 102, Virginia Roberts. Do you know Virginia Roberts? So she's, again, who? Virginia Roberts. Can you spell it? Common spelling, Virginia, like the state. Can you spell it for me, please? Roberts. How's it, what's the last name? How's it spelled? Roberts, I believe.
Yeah, so one of the things you want to go back and look at is, notice when the name Virginia Roberts is mentioned, how he palpitates his eyelids. So the British actor Hugh Grant, he's famous for that. And when he struggles with something, his eyelids palpitate. That shows discomfort. First and foremost, there's some sort of psychological discomfort associated with it. And increasingly, as he's pondering it, you notice that the furrowing of the lines on his forehead become deeper and deeper and deeper. which is not indicative of deception, but it just makes you wonder, what is he attempting to do here? Again, this is a staged event. This is the worst way to look at body language. But one of the things that stands out is how he self-soothes. Now, these are adaptive behaviors, as I said, but I call them pacifiers, is the corners of the mouth, these are the commissures, are very sensitive. They're more sensitive than other areas of the mouth. The reason for that is so that as babies, we can find the nipple. So they're extremely sensitive. As he's dealing with this question, which, you know, they keep asking him, does he know her and so forth. Notice how it's called perioral stroking. He does this. Mm-hmm. Okay, perioral stroking is a sort of reserved behavior for some people when they're under a lot of stress. So something has happened. Perhaps it's the mentioning of this woman's name has now caused him a lot of distress, and he can't self-soothe by the usual methods. He's got to go for the big kahuna, which is stroking all those precious nerves around the mouth to self-soothe. As an investigator, I would say, tally ho, this person, this cue really bothers him. And I would pursue that to no end.
Oh, that was so good. I had no idea about the mouth. He then grabs his cup. How much of like grabbing objects for comfort makes a difference? Because I'm just going for myself. If I'm uncomfortable, having a mug is very soothing for me.
Oh, sure. We do a self-hug where we cross our arms and we do a self-hug. But in this instance, he didn't do what he had done before, which is a subtle touch or the touching of the nose. He went for something even more powerful. It's like going for an extra, more powerful drug, and that one is the perioral stroking. He didn't lie. He didn't say anything. Right. But for an investigator, that doesn't matter because he just self-identified, this woman can hurt me. He's trying to portray himself as someone who doesn't know this individual. Oh, could you repeat that name? That was
going to be my next question, yeah.
Yeah, that's perception management. Now, he might have known her by another name or a nickname or something, and there's something to be said by that. But it's very easy to change perceptions or affect perceptions by pretending that. The other thing is, would you repeat that name again? Standard spelling. Would you repeat that name again? Could you repeat that name again? Anytime.
Can you spell that name?
Yeah, standard spelling, right?
I know, yeah. Isn't he supposed to be really smart as well? So the fact that he can't spell Roberts, I'm dyslexic and I can spell it. So
yeah. So anytime I see something like that, I need to just parse it and say, is he trying to dominate? But I'm also looking at it from the perspective of that he likes to take control. And so he doesn't have much control. He's not running the deposition. So I'm just going to stick my finger in the attorney's eye by making him spell it 3 times for me, maybe 4 times. But if you have a history of that, that's antisocial behavior. So it's like you're just confirming that you are manipulative and controlling. Thank you for that box. That's actually number 37 in Mr. Navarro's checklist. Let's go on.
Okay, that was amazing. Now I actually want to move on because you've seen the darkest, most manipulative sides of humans. And you actually say that there are 5 dangerous personality types that most of us have actually met or dated, and we don't even realize it. So I'd love to actually break those down with you if you're okay with it. And I want to start with the sociopath personality.
A sociopath is seen as someone who is constantly violating the law, maybe has a long rap sheet, has been arrested multiple times, doesn't seem to learn from the things that they do wrong. And that is to be differentiated, for instance, from the psychopath. And the definition of psychopath is fairly much well defined by the leading researcher in the world on psychopathy, which is Robert Hare. He's the one that wrote the preeminent book on the topic, Without Conscience. And from that, we learn that there are people who are, in essence, born. They're not created, who have no conscience, who have no remorse, whose brain we can actually look under fMRI, and we begin to see that the areas of the brain that should be activated, the prefrontal cortex, with managing behaviors, executive behaviors, with reacting to very negative things, they don't react. But to the point about victimhood, I always, having been in the FBI, having been in the behavioral assessment program, what we looked at was from the perspective of victims. And to me, the perspective of victims was the most important. When you go to a crime scene, most people don't know sociopathy. Most people don't know psychopathy. But they'll tell you the guy was a bastard. They'll tell you that the guy abused them. They'll tell you that they made him sit on the floor while they ate, or treat them poorly in public, or slap them. Those terms they understand. These psychological terms they don't seem to understand. So for me, when I look at do they victimize you mentally, physically, psychologically, emotionally, or financially? Especially when I've dealt with victims, I make sure that they look at that and properly score that as they keep their own journal, and say, since meeting this person, have you changed? Do you now have to deal with emotional distress and all the way to the financial distress?
What are some main traits, if you will, of a sociopath that if you were on a date with them, you'd be able to potentially notice?
Whether we're looking at a sociopath or a psychopath, those that we call social predators, those who victimize us, one of the things that stands out is that they seem to not care about rules or laws. And you begin to notice things like, I'm not entitled to park here, but I'm going to do it anyway. At a very sort of casual way, you begin to see that they really don't care about laws. They don't care about rules. They don't care about infringing on others. And that begins to warn you, okay, well, that's not the household I came in. My household, you respected other people's property. If you saw something and it may belong to a neighbor, it doesn't belong to me. We look at the behaviors, but then we look at how they view the world. They view the world as something to take advantage of before that world takes advantage of you. Well, everybody else is doing it. Well, nobody pays all their taxes, or the way they speak to you. So this is really important. How we are spoken to, are we spoken to as equals, or are we denigrated? Are we seen as something lower? Now, we may sort of dismiss that at first. I hear this from young people all the time. He comes from a neighborhood where women are referred to as bitch. Okay. And how long are you willing to tolerate that?
They're saying that almost as an excuse of like, no, it's not that they're toxic, it's the way they were brought up.
Right. And that's when I say stop right there. First of all, that's not acceptable. because no matter, that explains it, but it doesn't excuse it, as somebody famously once said. And so we begin to catalog these little things and say, the minute you refer to me as that, or they begin to treat you in such a way that you're always inferior. And I'll give you an example. I'm going out with the boys. No, you got to stay home. And at first, you may be willing to tolerate certain things because you say, oh, we're adjusting or we're getting to know each other. But the fact is, the behaviors are there that begin to telegraph that you are not respected, nor are you valued in the same way that I am. And of course, that's just the beginning of it, because then we have behaviors that may put you in jeopardy because they don't respect laws. They may decide, well, I'm just going to speed at 100 miles an hour because we're going to get to the event faster. Yeah, but you may crash. And you don't think about that. Oh, he's speeding because it's ha ha ha. No, he's speeding because he has no respect for the law, which is indicative of the pathology, right? Pathology, the illness, the mindset that the laws don't apply to me.
Coming up.
The problem in relationships is that you're never equal. You will always be devalued. You will always be inferior. They can be very intense in the courtship phase, but once they achieve like marriage or they move in or so forth, then it begins to change and unravel very quickly.
What up, my homie? Let's talk about one of my favorite things on earth, summer, aka the season of non-stop freaking madness, where you're dropping your kids off at summer camp, you're running to work every day, you're hitting cookouts, you're squeezing in workouts, and somehow you're still trying to eat clean. No wonder that we're all hangry. That's why I always keep Paleo Valley beef sticks in my bag. In fact, I actually keep multiple because I know my husband always tries to steal them. Because we're always running around, then one of us is definitely gonna get hungry last minute, and then what ends up happening is we end up crashing, or we end up even worse, snacking on food that just makes us feel worse. So these beef sticks are made from 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef, no antibiotics, no hormones, and here's the kicker, they're naturally fermented, which means that you actually support your gut health too. So right now, Paleo Valley is offering our listeners 30 beef sticks for $36. Just click the link in the show notes and take advantage of the offer and stock up right now. Because yes, you can start snacking smarter in order to feel better and freaking crush your day during the summer. Go check them out. How would you know in real time then if it is somebody who has the psychopathic, sociopathic personality, or it's someone that would just talk bad habits? Go fast when there's not a cop. Swear, women are bitches. Things where it's like you've just been taught that's how it is, versus an actual personality.
We would want to see some sort of response that is pro-social, to remain at that speed, to increase speed. And I remember this because once again, we're the ones that in law enforcement that get to the crime scene, and then we are talking to the victims. And then what happened? And then he sped up. Or, we told him stop drinking. And so what did he do? He started smoking marijuana on top of the drinking. And so it became worse. You have to decide, in essence, what is within the norms of your society and say, is this pro-social? Pro-social is, I'm going to take care of Lisa. I'm not going to do anything to put her in harm. I'm not going to put other people in harm. I'm going to be respectful, but I'm not going to be dismissive of others. And if I ask you to slow down, hopefully you will. So one of the things that both the sociopath and the psychopath tend to do is they try to control your space, your time, and your thoughts, as well as your body. 4 things. So they'll try to control your time by always being like in your face, always being there. They give you no freedom or latitude. They insist that you accompany them here or there. And so they begin to take control of of your time. They begin to control your physical space. And this often on the street, you meet someone and you say, boy, I just don't feel comfortable around him. This guy at the bar, he just won't leave me alone. He's got that arm planted on at the bar, and he just seems to pivot around me, and he's like suffocating me with his, whoa, time out. Why are you still there? You talk to the manager and you say, I want somebody to escort me out of this place. Why? Because we know the social predator will try to control your time and your space. And if you're feeling uncomfortable, you better listen to yourself. One more thing. He begins to control my physical body, right? He may, come in and try to kiss you when you don't want to be kissed, or tries to move you in some way, or, as we read about every day, you look away and they put something in a drink. And now this is another way to control you, or they try to control you psychologically. And we've seen this where people feel like, well, I can't get away. One of the victims I talked to, lovely individual. I mean, just the sweetest human being, gets married. She's now 46 years old, and she's become the human chew toy for her husband, who every time he comes home, he's just so disparaging. So I'm talking to her. I know I only have a few minutes. She's always looking around. And I said, well, can you get away? And she says, he controls the money. And then it hits. Oh, how many times have I heard this before? Where initially he said, oh, let me be the gallant one. I'll control the money for us, and I'll pay all the bills, and you don't have to worry. She says, I don't know where we bank. I don't know how much money I have. And so now the predator begins to control your possessions and your values. We know that the psychopathy, your true Robert Hare psychopath, is 1% of the population. But whoa, they may be as high as 3 or 4% in certain professions. What are they? Get ready for this. Law.
Enforcement. Really?
Oh, but yes. Law enforcement, medicine, right? And you say, why are these people there? Well, because think about it, about what we just talked about. What does the social predator want? He wants to control you, space, time, your resources, your body. Is there a better way? In law, you can do it. How many attorneys are convicted every year of stealing their clients' money? People go into law enforcement, as I did, to help victims. There are people that go into law enforcement to violate laws.
Oh, that's right. Wasn't the Golden State Killer an officer? He was, I believe, on the task force when he was first doing burglaries. So before he graduated to murder, he was doing burglaries, and he was on the task force. So he literally was hearing ways and the things that they were doing to try and catch him.
Exactly. They can run license plates, or they can look at, a lot. I remember when you used to be able to call the police and say, hey, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. Could you have people drive by more often, police more often? And then those places got hit. So certain professions, one of the most prolific killers of individual was a doctor in the UK who would inject poison into the elderly. And so you have certain populations which will be higher in antisocial behavior, in psychopathy, and so forth.
One thing actually that's super important that I just realized is a lot of those professions that you just listed have automatic credibility baked in.
Oh, yeah. I wrote about this for Psychology Today. Why were so much of the so many psychopaths attracted to the clergy? Yeah, something, 40 years ago, we didn't talk about that, but we talk about it now. And you realize here they're cloaked, as you say, with the authority. They're cloaked with all the things, all the accoutrements that we attach to trustworthiness, when in fact, they may not be trustworthy because, as I always say, trustworthiness is performative.
Here's the thing, Joe. So you gave an example earlier, which I actually loved, where you were saying if you're on a date and you're at a bar and a guy does X, Y, and Z, that can be a sign, speak up immediately and loud. Yep. That's very empowering. The thing that I never want to lose sight of is the stuff in the middle that isn't so obvious. So for instance, if you're out on a date and you really like him, because there's one thing, it's a bit of a creep. I don't quite know who's standing next to me. He comes and stands next to me in the bar. He's got a bit of BO, that's one thing. But it's a very different game when you're at a bar and let's say you're on a date and the guy is just charming and he's handsome and he puts his hand on your hand. You can perceive that as romantic, as, oh, he's now moving in. One of the things that I know that you've spoken about and I talk about a lot on this show is gut instincts. A lot of us women will ignore the gut instinct when it's someone that is charming, that is handsome, that where we feel wooed. And so we often will ignore that gut instinct. But I believe that you say that we can actually find signs in somebody within 3 milliseconds?
Exactly. So let's dig deeper. Never ignore your gut feelings. And I mean never. If you feel like you shouldn't get in that elevator, don't get into it. If you feel like you shouldn't get into that car, don't get in there. Look, let's be clear here. You have no social obligation ever to be victimized. That period. So, it might offend him, or that's sheer nonsense. If I care about you and something's making you uncomfortable, I will do whatever it takes so that you aren't uncomfortable. And the same thing goes with us. Our subconscious, we know this from the work of Dr. Ambati, who sadly passed away, Harvard University. And her research showed that our brains, right? We used to think, we impress people in the first 10 minutes, then 4 minutes, then the first minute. That's sheer nonsense. Our brains assess for danger in 3 milliseconds. That's faster than you can blink. And that's not, that's just something he just threw out there. No, stop right there. That is the research over and over. That's how fast your subconscious evolved to react to the world, not really think about it, but to react to the world. And through our vagus system, right? So we have 2 vagal nerves that descend and go to the heart, the lungs, and the stomach. And there are neurons there. You have neurons in your stomach, in your lungs, and in your heart. And they are communicating back and forth. It's called the polyvagal complex. Now, your subconscious is processing the world around you infinitely and exquisitely, by the way, more elegantly than you could ever think about it. And so all of a sudden you get this gut feeling, something's not right. For God's sake, listen to that. From an evolutionary standpoint, the limbic system, which is a really primitive system, which goes way back to when we first became mammals, really doesn't think that much about the world. It processes the world instantly to keep us alive first and foremost. And so those sentiments that may come immediate, which we can't figure out. Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like I have to press the lock on my door and I don't have to justify it to anybody? Oh, you shouldn't lock your door. Actually, lock your door anytime you want. Yeah, but it might offend somebody. I'm sorry. I don't live in a world where there is perfect law enforcement and there are no bad people. I just don't live in that world.
So that's really powerful, Joe. I respect it, love it. It's the thing, though, that doesn't come easily to a lot of us women. And I'm going to use myself as the example. I have such a vivid memory. I was around 14 years old and I was walking home from school in London and I'm cutting through a park. And as I cut through the park, I just come out and I hear this car and the car's going very slowly. And I'm in my school uniform and I'm walking and the streets are clear. There's no one around. Yeah. And the car is going at the same pace that I'm walking. And so I'm 14 years old. I've been brought up to be a good girl. Like, I literally have been patted on the head and been told you need to be a good girl. So I've been brought up to be a good girl. I hear this car. It's following me. It's going very slowly. I turn around and it's one guy by himself and he's staring at me. I remember that so much to this day. Now, here's the thing. I hesitated. In my mind, I was like, if I run, I'm going to look silly. If I run, this poor man thinks that I think he's bad. Like, all of this weird guilt, shame, conditioning came rushing in. Yeah. And then the third and final thought was, well, who cares? Because if he kills you, I think you'd rather have run and look silly. So I ran. Now, that was a very monumental moment for me to really think through and say, I would rather look silly, look stupid, make a mistake, than ever be kidnapped, killed, psychopath gets me, whatever. Yeah. And I actually have a stat here. So despite trusting our intuition, 59% of women delay acting on those instincts, and 66% wait until disruption occurs before then responding. So when I think about that, that's such a high number, Joe, that when I think about gut instinct, I love that you've already said it, but are there any things that actually as a woman, we can keep in mind when thinking about the gut instinct and how to somewhat not ignore it?
Powerful statistic, but to your question, which is profound, the first thing I would tell you is that because your subconscious, let's just call it that, your subconscious is processing the world so quickly. It doesn't have time. It works under the concept what's called heuristics. It looks for little shortcuts. They're not perfect, but we didn't evolve to be perfect. We evolved to assess at a level, maybe around 70%, 80%, that it would keep us safe. And so maybe your hairs stand up. Maybe you feel like, normally men don't put that hand there on the bar and keep it there for so long. You are thinking of it in two ways. Cognitively, you can now see the hand and you do that evaluation. I haven't seen that before. Your subconscious is saying, look, Lisa, he's within 20 inches of you. Nobody should be within 20 inches of you unless you say it's okay. So your subconscious is picking up on that, but there's that argument. And what I would say is latch on to the freedom that comes with realizing that this isn't voodoo stuff. This isn't myth. That we have an exquisitely elegant system that protects us, that assesses the world, senses the world, and begins to communicate with that thought. Why is that hand here? Why doesn't this guy go away? Maybe our heart rate increases. Maybe we just feel this comfort. And you say, why is it that in some people their throat tightens? And, they do that hard swallow, or their chest feels tight, or their stomach doesn't feel right, because that's the polyvagal matrix. Those are the neurons communicating to the stomach. Stop processing food because we may have to run. So get your act together and start listening to your body. So the message is listen to your body above and beyond what cognition says, when there is the potential that your life, your property, or yourself are in danger, period.
Oh my God, Joe, that was so good. The thing about the swallowing, the heart race, the gut,
stomach, yeah.
the stomach, all because your body's saying, well, you can't eat, you shouldn't be able to digest food because there may be danger. Understand, like I'm obsessed with understanding why. If I understand why something happens, now my brain really does make that connection. So once upon a time, I would have gone, that's weird. I'm swallowing funny. I'm such a storyteller. I went to film school. So you've literally now given me a story to remind myself the next time. Because the idea that my stomach hurts, well, your body can't process it, Lisa, because you may need to run. Oh, great. What do I need to run from? And now I'm actually paying attention. I love that. That was so good.
The problem is, right? We're not paying attention to it. And why is that? Look what our parents do to us. We see something odd, right? And they say, don't stare at that. Don't look at him.
Oh, my God.
Are you serious? We evolved as a species to assess each other, to understand who is this person? Why are they there? Why are they acting this way? And so, well, what's the first thing we do to children? Don't look at that. And so we turn them into very poor observers. And then, it's like, don't worry, I'll take care of you. Oh, now I'm outsourcing my protection. Oh, you need to reel that back. We need to reel that back and say, I'm responsible for my safety, not the Ring camera, not the alarm, and not the police officer in the car that may go by every 55 minutes or whatever. I'm responsible for that. And the only way to take advantage of that is if I become not hypervigilant, but hypersensitive to everything that's around me, and then the reactions that my body has to that. If there's one thing I want people to take away from this program, is to listen to their gut, to listen to those hairs that stand up on your hand. It's interesting how often people who have been victimized, when we then talk to them, usually, unfortunately, post-mortem, they'll say, oh, I had a bad feeling about that guy. Oh, he just gave me the creeps. And okay, why wasn't that stated, and why didn't we deal with that? And it's because society has taken that away from you.
All right, so we've got the sociopath, the psychopath, and now I want to move on to the paranoid.
Paranoia is actually one of those really bewildering pathologies that when you see it, you don't recognize it, because what does it look like? I'll tell you what it looks like. You marry a paranoid and all of a sudden they want to know, who are you calling? Why is somebody calling you? Who's knocking at the door? Why did somebody come in when I wasn't here? What are you buying? When you say, well, I just thought he was eccentric. Stop right there. This isn't the third grade. No, that's paranoia. When they're questioning the simplest of things, when they're very rigid in their thinking, very moralistic, in fact. Oh, the Bible doesn't permit that. That can only come from evil. And so, whoa. That's actually paranoid ideation, that your behavior has to satisfy a certain pattern. And if it doesn't, all of a sudden you change your routine. Oh, I thought I'd walk by the flowers today. Why did you walk by the flowers? This is clinical paranoia. Here's what happens. So if you live with somebody like that, basically you're giving up all of your freedom, because everything has to be justified to them. And the first thing that goes is happiness. So one of the things I tell people is, if there's no joy or happiness in your life, there's a likelihood that somebody is paranoid, especially if they have these other traits. The other thing that they may do is they're constantly arguing. And the paranoid personality is interesting, and I've interviewed many of them. They know a lot about very little. They can take a passage from Ezekiel, and they'll quote you Ezekiel all day long. Well, congratulations, you know one thing, but you don't know many things, and they don't go outside that. So they become very rigid, very fixated, very demanding, and they begin to restrict who you can see, We don't want to see your family. So you're on the phone saying, Mom, I can't come see you this year. How many times have I seen that? And by the way, nation states can be clinically paranoid. You can have countries and leaders that are clinically paranoid. Joseph Stalin was clinically paranoid. Adolf Hitler, one of his pathologies, we think about malignant narcissism, he was clinically paranoid. Who did he fear? Jews, minorities, the Roma. But we don't talk about it that way. But in clinical terms, satisfies everything. Rigid in thinking, highly moralistic, unyielding, unbending, and fears. Fears what? A person, a human, a child? Are you serious? Like you said, let's call things what they are. That's clinical paranoia. But what do we say? Oh, he's eccentric, or he's just a little odd, or
if it's in a relationship and he's like, well, who are you calling? Who's that guy? You can perceive it as he just loves me. I can actually see how some women over time may perceive that as love, as affection, as attention. But to your point, it ends up being the toxic part of like, you then are controlled, where you go, who you see. All right, so now moving on, tell me more about the emotionally unstable.
So in the book, Dangerous Personalities, I talk about individuals, and this is probably the saddest aspect of it. When it comes to the emotionally unstable, they really need help. So your borderline personality, which may act out to get attention. They may go from very happy to very sad. Who may be very highly susceptible to having a multitude of lovers, to experimenting with drugs, who are they're very susceptible to gurus. But they're also, they are, and they're very susceptible to drugs, experimentation, and they are very big, what I call wound collectors. In other words, they hang on to grievances, and those grievances are then brought out 3 months later, 3 years later. I know of one where the daughter is actually in her 60s, and the mother still brings up things. The mother's 88 now. She brings up things from when that child was 9 and 10. So they hold on to grievances. They collect wounds, so that then they can hold that against you at a future point. So probably one of the better books on the borderline personality is I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. So they tend to idealize you. If you hear about a relationship where you have to wake up every morning to see what mood they're in, the children do, or the husband does, and it's like, oh, she's in a good mood. That's usually a borderline personality. What's interesting with borderline is when there's testosterone, so with the male borderline, they're much more violent, extremely violent. So we tend to classify them as, oh, he's a wife beater or he's antisocial, when in fact they're borderlines. They tend to be very impulsive. Oh yeah, let's go drinking. And all of a sudden, there happened in Miami the other day, a child's left in a hot car, almost died. These people really, I feel the most for, because they didn't ask to be this way, but they are the ones that need the most help. And unfortunately, they don't often get very much help. They end up in jail, which is not a place to treat a borderline personality or like histrionic personality.
So now I'd like to talk about narcissism. So talk to me about narcissists.
Sure.
Who are the biggest narcissists? I hear they're like CEOs and presidents. Is that accurate?
Yes, and yeah. So Narcissism for me, and I've been studying this now well around 40 years, is really about, and if for your audience, is overvaluation of self, devaluation of others. Foundational. They overvalue themselves and they devalue others. You are never their equal. You will never be their equal. They demand total loyalty, and God forbid you disagree with them. They're very prideful. They're very boastful. I'm the best. I'm the greatest. No one knows as much as me. Blah, blah, blah. And what's interesting, when I wrote my book, I based it on my detailed studies that I had done when I was in the FBI. I looked at world leaders. So I looked at, for instance, the narcissistic traits of Adolf Hitler, who thought he knew more than his generals, apparently not. Fidel Castro, who did all sorts of nasty things and devalued others, and Jim Jones down in Guyana, who said, I have the answers. I have the solution. Follow me. They're just demented of the mind. They overvalue themselves. And for them, there is no respect. There is no feelings of remorse. They never apologize. And if they do, it's transactional. If I apologize, will you just leave me alone? We say that they account for 2% of the population. But I think if you meet most CEOs, you would be very comfortably correct if about 20 to 22% of most CEOs have narcissistic traits. I think it's very common also in medicine. I think it's also very common in politics. Politicians who say, no, I have the answer. The problem in relationships is that you're never equal. You will always be devalued. You will always be inferior. They can be very intense in the courtship phase, but once they achieve like marriage or they move in or so forth, then it begins to change and unravel very quickly. And in the end, you really become their human chew toy, and you become their human chew toy every day. There is degradation of one sort or another every day, whether they're made to sit on the floor, or in one household, only the father could drink the good Coke because it was expensive, but the rest of the family had to buy the cheap Coke. They're so childlike. The malignant narcissist only values themselves. To literally to literally go to a store and say, well, we're going to buy a 6-pack of regular Coke for me. You guys have to buy the cheap brand because it's $1.69 less.
Okay, so what's the reasoning behind why the family supports it? And what I mean is, I think to be okay with something like that, you have to make up a story in your head. And so when the guy goes and does that, do you think, or maybe I'm wrong, but does the mother go, he's a narcissist, just let him have it? Or do you make up a story in your head to be okay with it? And that story is, well, look, daddy goes out, he works very hard, we don't have enough money, so let daddy have the lovely Coke. And now as the mom, you're just making peace, you're making the kids feel okay with it. But basically you're supporting their narcissistic ways.
And you nailed it. And that's exactly what happens. We become adapters. We adapt to the pathology because all we want is to be loved and appreciated. By the way, you can have a very pathologically malignant female narcissist. I mean, when you look at the movie, the Devil Wears Prada, there's narcissism as displayed by a great actress, and the children who suffer from that, who are never valued, they're always undervalued. They can never measure up. But what I've learned about humans is Humans seek psychological comfort. And when we're in the presence of a predator, when we're in the presence of a toxic personality, we go out of our way to try to accommodate them, right? The mind seeks psychological comfort. What we have difficulty with is confronting these individuals, especially early on in their life, and say, no, you're not entitled to anything more than any other human. You don't have the answers to every question. You do not get to overvalue yourself over me, ever. We can be equals, but you're not going to devalue me. We don't do that. When we do that, when we leave that person, and I highly recommend just leave. Distance yourself, because that's really the only thing that helps. And I've had women say, this in my 45th year, I finally got out, my 22nd year, my 7th year, whatever. The question that I ask people to ask themselves is, how long can you tolerate this? Have you come up with a number? Can you tolerate it for 6 weeks? Congratulations. But what happens after that? Could you tolerate it 2 more years until the children leave high school? Okay, right. But what is the shelf life of this? And are you prepared for the consequences of dealing with this? What consequences? Psychological, mental, physical, emotional? Oh yeah, and financial. I don't know if you've noticed, but now you're going to see a therapist because of the person you're married to. So that's costing you money. So make sure you add all this stuff up. And few people are willing to confront things that way. Is how long are you willing to tolerate this? And what we're also not willing to tolerate is the effect that it's having, for instance, on our children. We think our children don't notice. Children notice everything. And you know why? Because they have that same brain that has that same limbic system that is assessing the world. And they know every argument. They know every fight. They know everything that's going on. They know, every time daddy comes home, mommy's chin comes down, her shoulders sag, she walks around mopey. They notice everything. So the question then is, how long are you willing to tolerate your children seeing this now? And believe me, I understand many circumstances people just cannot get out. They have no resources. They have no one they can rely on, all sorts of things. But I think it's a conversation that people need to have and be realistic and say, person aside, these behaviors are going to kill me. They're going to corrode me. They are going to ruin me or my children, who may grow up either becoming little mini tyrants and mini narcissists, or who become very rough and have no empathy for other individuals.
That's exactly what hit me when you were telling me the story about the Coke, because I thought this little girl, maybe mum is telling her, it's okay, daddy works really hard, daddy gets the good Coke. Mm-hmm. Okay, if I've had my mum tell me that, if that's what I'm supposed to believe, now what does that young girl look like at 19? What does she look like at 21 when she goes on the date and this guy starts showing these signs? It feels normal to her. And so before you know it, she then gets wrapped up into that cycle because she thinks it's normal, because that's what she's been taught. And then to your point, it can become this never-ending thing. How long can you endure it? I love asking that question. And I don't think people should judge themselves, because I think it is important to assess all the elements, right? It's, if you leave, is your life at danger? How do you financially support yourself? Like, all of these things are real. And there's a lot of resources out there that I think can help a lot of women. But I think it all starts with the acknowledgement, the assessment of this is where I am, and the belief that a different choice can be made. It may not be easy, it may take time, it may take years, but the idea of hope is something I very much love and I'm always trying to deliver. Like, there is hope. It may not be easy, like I said, but there is hope. I love doing this deep work, and you've written multiple books on it. But for someone that's maybe just getting started, are there a couple of things that they're like, okay, in rank order, these are the things that are important to look at?
There are, and I'm glad no one's ever asked that, and I love it. So if you're watching this, and I know many of you are, take out a pencil. So for the narcissist, the one thing I would say is look for overvaluation of self, devaluation of other. For the psychopath is the cold indifference towards others. For the sociopath, I would say it's that everybody does it, so it's okay for us to do it. For the borderline personality, the emotionally unstable, I would say it's if you have to check every day to see if they're normal, up or down, then you may be you're with somebody that really needs psychiatric help, actually. The paranoid, it's always, I don't trust anybody and neither should you. So it's not much. For those, in the book, one of the things that I did in the book is, and I know you've noticed it, is I have a list from the victims. This isn't from psychologists. This is the victims who described what with one word or two words, what it's like to live or work with this person. And so a lot of times you don't even have to look at all their behaviors. Just look at how people refer to this person, or how you yourself react to this person. And it's amazing how accurate, right? Nothing's 100%. It may not even be at 80%, but boy, oh boy, it's so accurate when you see, oh, he's so hard-headed, or he's eccentric, or he doesn't listen to anybody, or he's moralistic, or he's so rigid or he questions everything. That's your paranoid.
Do you think it would be a good idea then to maybe get, and I'm just thinking in real time because I'm always action oriented. So as you were saying it, I was like, it may be really useful if you're a woman and you're dating a guy and all of your friends have met him. Maybe just like, hey guys, I just want to do an exercise. Everyone please write down one word that they feel about X, Y, and Z, about, Bob. And don't be biased, like just be honest. Would that be a healthy way to kind of see how other people are also seeing that person so that you realize that you're not giving that one word with your rose-colored glasses?
I love the concept. In fact, in doing my research, I look at Love Island UK. So
that's amazing.
with my wife, by the way, because we enjoy that show. Is what if you took all your buddies and said, write down in a word what you think of that person and mask your handwriting, but be honest.
Oh.
Mix it up. And then just hand it over and see if you see the words like, and I've seen this with the victims who were dealing with someone who was a social predator. Don't trust him. He's icky. Something's not right. Right? Now, what's interesting is none of that is in the clinical journals, in the clinical, I have, 12 linear feet of that. But the victims and their friends, they identify that. And what's striking to me is how close to the truth they come. That what they describe as icky is like he's inconsiderate. The malignant narcissist never asks any questions about you, could care less. How was your day? Where do you come from? All they care about is themselves. And so at the end of the day, it's like, he told me this, he told me that, I feel like I really know him. What does he know about you? Well, he didn't ask me any questions. He just asked me for my number. Whoa, time out. You spent an hour and a half talking to somebody and they didn't ask any questions about you? Let's go back to what that Navarro guy said, overvalues himself and devalues others. The fact that he took no personal interest in you, your life, your family, what you like to do and so forth. Sorry, mate, but that's devaluation. Once you learn what valuation is and devaluation is, then you say, oh my God, he never asked any questions about me, but he's always talking about what he's done or, this or that. Okay, let's call it what it is. You devalue people when you don't take any interest in them.
Joe, your work, everything that you do is just amazing. I've been trying to get you on for years. For anyone at home, I literally have been trying to get this man on for years. So eventually we just said, okay, let's just do Zoom, because I think that your tools and tactics, the things you've learned, your books that you've written can really seriously, no BS, help women and potentially save lives. So thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you and all the amazing content and things that you're putting out? You've got a YouTube channel.
I got a YouTube channel. You can just type in my name, joenavarro.net, and all that will show up. But really, thank you for what you do, because I think you haven't said it, but I think in many ways you're like me. You think about the victims. You care about people, and I do too. And anything we can do to share knowledge with them, empower them, make them healthier, make them stronger, more resilient, I'm all for that. So thank you. And I'm sorry it took so long.
No, we got there in the end, Joe. Thank you so much. Guys, Joe just laid out a most incredible masterclass of how to identify the potential danger that you may be in with a person that you're dating or someone in your life, as well as identifying the moments that potentially they could be deceiving you. It isn't a one and done. It isn't black and white. And that's, I think, why a lot of us get trapped, because we start to question, maybe I'm imagining it, maybe, just maybe. But after this, I really hope there's no maybe. I hope that you're able to identify things, make change immediately, so that you never give your power away. You never find yourself in a dangerous situation, in a dangerous romantic relationship, because you deserve more. Guys, if you're not following me, follow me at Lisa Bilyeu. And if you're not subscribed, smash that subscribe button down there. And until next time, be the hero of your own life. Peace. If you want to learn how to spot a narcissist on a first date, you've got to click this video right here.
Everything looked great on the surface, but something felt off. Something didn't feel right, and they don't even know that they're dealing with a psychopath. I know every tactic in the book, every single mind control, hypnosis trick.